Are you a business owner or entrepreneur who's had great success in the business world, and now you want to launch a speaking career to share your message with the world? If that's you, then listen up. 25-year speaking industry veteran Brett Ridgway has released his latest special report, 3 key things entrepreneurs must master to build a profitable speaking business. To pick up your copy, go to brettridgway.com/freebie. Welcome to the Spotlight on Speaking show with Brett Ridgway, where you'll learn the keys to building a profitable speaking business from speaking industry pros. Each week, we interview a great guest who will share his or her speaking journey, identify what their keys to success have been, and highlight some critical mistakes they've made along the way that you'll want to avoid. Be sure to visit our website at spotlightonspeaking.com. And while you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, sit back, tune in, and get ready to meet this week's guest.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Spotlight on Speaking show. I'm your host, Brett Ridgway, and I'm excited to have as my guest today, Caelan Huntress. Caelan is an American digital nomad living in New Zealand and has spent 10 years running an online business while traveling the world with his young family. Caelan is a dynamic speaker, trainer, and business coach who started his career as an acrobat in the circus. His skills as a theatrical performer and marketing strategist combine to make compelling virtual experiences. As a creative director of Stellar Platforms, a digital marketing agency that helps experts and entrepreneurs set up smart marketing systems, he has helped thousands of people increase their income, impact, and influence. Welcome, Caelan, to the Spotlight on Speaking show.
Thanks, Brett. I'm excited for this conversation.
All right, so the obvious first question is why New Zealand? And what time is it over there now? It's a little after 3:30 in the afternoon as we begin this recording. It's got to be like 5 in the morning for you or something, isn't it?
It's actually 8:30 in the morning on Tuesday.
8:30.
Because I live in the future.
All right. Well, hey, better than living in the past, certainly. So
that's right. Yeah.
All right. So this program is about your speaking journey, Caelan. So I interviewed lots of different speakers on the program. Some are keynote speakers, some are platform sellers, some are people just using speaking to their local community as a business building exercise. So which of those areas do you fall under in terms of your speaking career? And how did you even get started in the first place?
Well, I started in the theater. I was a child actor. I did Shakespeare in the Park a bunch of times and then ran away and joined the circus. And so I spent a lot of my time as a street performer. I once hitchhiked across North America supporting myself with a guitar and went busking out on a bunch of street corners. And I'd play guitar and people would throw some money in the case if they liked the song. And that was how I supported myself for a year. And then when I settled down, found myself a lady and started having kids, I found that the performer's life was very difficult to raise a family. And so I found other career paths that allowed me to monetize my charisma. Things like waiting tables, sales, and finally I landed on marketing, which actually uses a lot of my theatrical skills. Because with marketing, Brett, I'm doing a performance for people and I rehearse that performance. If I'm in a theater and I'm performing for an audience at one point in time, then that uses these performance skills that I developed over my lifetime. But I use those same skills in marketing. It's just I'm not performing for an audience, I'm performing for a demographic over time. And with my digital marketing agency, Stellar Platforms, I found this niche with experts. Authors, coaches, and speakers. Those are my people. That's my lane. I know those communities really well because I'm a professional public speaker and a business coach. And I'm also the author of a book called Marketing Yourself, How to Elevate Your Personal Platform to the Next Level. And I developed this after years of working with professional speakers as my clients. I was their back-end marketing guy. And they would pass me around as, oh, you're doing a new launch. You gotta go and talk to Caelan, And I've worked with a bunch of Hall of Fame speakers and New York Times best-selling authors. And one day I was on a client call, You asked how I got started in speaking, and this is really where I made the jump into speaking professionally. I was here in New Zealand, and I was talking with one of my clients, Mike Rayburn, who in 2019 was the co-chair of the National Speakers Association Conference, Influence, in Denver. And we're having our Thursday morning call. We're talking about his new online course and the sales funnels that are linked to it. And I said, how's the conference coming? It's this weekend, right? And he said, oh man, I had a speaker break her leg, and I don't know how I'm going to replace her on such short notice. And I said, what's her topic? And he said, how to monetize your thought leadership. I don't know anybody who can talk on that, and you're all the way in New Zealand. And so I said, well, what if I came up to Denver? And he said, if you fly up to Denver this weekend from New Zealand, then that spot is yours. And so the next day I hopped on a plane and went up to Denver and gave an impromptu speech. I'd been doing a lot of webinars as my lead generation activity for a long time. So I had plenty of slides and I had presentations that I had done virtually through Zoom, but that was my first real big speaking event. And after that, I did a couple more, and then the pandemic hit. And everybody had to pivot to virtual events. And thankfully, since I had spent some time in webinars, I was able to make that transition really quickly. And so I started training other speakers on how to give good virtual events, because they're different, right? If you're speaking in front of an audience and you're in person and you're sharing breath, that's a very different sort of live interaction than if you're on Zoom and you're one click away from highly addictive social media technology. And so for a while, I taught a course through eSpeakers. It was a certification for teaching professional speakers, CSPs and CPAEs, how to give better Zoom presentations. And for a while, I was one of the foremost experts on virtual events. And during the pandemic, that was a great place to be. But now that we're through all that and everybody's back in person, now I'm speaking on live stages again, too. And it's a lot of fun.
So let's dive into the virtual world a little bit, because it is not going away whatsoever. I mean, obviously, here we are talking virtually. So
that's right.
What is your best advice to speakers who want to do Zoom presentations or Zoom talks to groups in some form as to how to give the best virtual presentation?
The best piece of advice I can give, Brett, is that in virtual events, you need to do more asking and less telling. When people are sitting in an audience, they can't get out. Your 45-minute keynote, they're stuck in their chair unless they want to stand up and let everybody see them walk out the door. But in Zoom, it's really easy for people to look like they're paying attention to you while they're checking email and they're doing other things. However, if you ask for interaction, hey, everybody type in the chat box, what time is it where you are? What city are you in? You know, which one of these cats on the scale of cat matches how you feel today? Type a number in the chat box. These sorts of things, they invite engagement. And when you're asking for people to pay attention through asking them what they think, how they react, what their thoughts are, they're much more likely to give you your attention than if you're just talking at them all the time. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. So when you're doing a keynote presentation, Caelan, obviously in the platform selling world, success is measured by how much you sold from the stage. Pretty simple. As a keynote speaker, how do you measure success, whether your talk has really hit home or not?
There's a couple of ways. The easiest way is email subscribers. Did you get any people subscribing to your email list through saying, hey, subscribe here and you can get the slides, or you can get this free giveaway, which is this workbook, which is related to the topic we just talked about. That's the quantitative method you could use to measure your effectiveness. But I really prefer the qualitative method where I listen to see what people think. How many people come up to me afterwards and say, oh my gosh, that was really fantastic. And I typically do this by, I have a standard ending I give to all of my virtual presentations. And I let people know early in the presentation, I'll give you a way to get these slides at the end. And then when we get to the end, I go through my rehearsed pitch Thanks so much for spending this time with me today. If you'd like to get the slides, here's a link in the chat box. I'm happy to give you the slides. The only thing I ask is that you give me some feedback on how I did. I'm a professional public speaker. This is my craft, and your feedback helps me improve. So this link takes you to a survey on my website, which you can fill out anonymously if you like. But if you'd like to subscribe to my newsletter to stay in touch, this is a great way to do it. And go ahead and fill out this survey, and I'll send you the slides from the presentation.
That's a great
and I rehearsed that.
Yeah, that's a great call to action. So you talk about slides, Caelan. So give me some do's and don'ts on slides, whether it's an in-person presentation or whether it's a virtual presentation.
The best piece of advice on slides I ever learned was from Jeffrey Gitomer, the king of sales. He wrote the Sales Bible, the Little Red Book of Selling, a whole mess of different. And I worked with him producing his webinar series way back in the day. And I saw him live once. And he said something that really struck home with me. He said, slides are free. One idea, one slide. And that transformed how I look at slides. Now, when I see a speaker have a list of 10 bullets on a slide, my eyes zone out. I can't pay attention. But if you take each one of those bullets and you make a separate slide for each one, even if you start with your big list of 10, and then you duplicate that and erase the last line, and duplicate that and erase the next line, then you can progressively reveal each bullet. You put up bullet 1 and you talk about it and read it out loud. Bullet 2 and you talk about it and read it out loud. So that's, I think, the best piece of advice I can give, Brett, is one idea, one slide. Okay, so
obviously a big question any new speaker has is, how do I get gigs? So what works best for you in terms of lining up speaking appearances?
Well, I've had a lot of success lately with LinkedIn Sales Navigator, making a list of meeting planners, conference organizers, and event professionals, and sending them a PDF link to a speaker kit. And make it clear that, just use a URL that ends in .pdf and say, hey, if you have any events coming up, here's the topics I talk about. And LinkedIn Sales Navigator lets you target a whole bunch of people, and you can just send out your speaker kit to a lot of potential customers and get your speaker kit in their hands. If they have any sort of interaction where they're like, oh, thanks for sending this. This looks really interesting. You can follow up with a link to your speaker reel, a YouTube link that's 3 minutes long of you on stage, ideally with some clips of happy audience members just after you speak saying, wow, I really liked this. This was really great. And, making those video speaker reels, that's something I've been doing a lot this year. It's really fun.
All right, so I have some other questions I want to ask you, Caelan, but before we do, let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor.
Are you a business owner or entrepreneur who's had great success in the business world, and now you want to launch a speaking career to share your message with the world? If that's you, then listen up. 25-year speaking industry veteran Brett Ridgway has released his latest special report, 3 key things entrepreneurs must master to build a profitable speaking business. To pick up your copy, go to brettridgway.com/freebie.
And we are back with the Spotlight on Speaking show. I'm my guest, Caelan Huntress. So, Caelan, one of the favorite questions I have that I love to ask my guests is, okay, it's time to bare your soul a little bit here, buddy. Share an embarrassing moment from your speaking career that left you a little bit red-faced at the time, but a valuable lesson was learned, and it would be something you would advise other people not to do.
I was on a virtual conference once, and it was a day-long virtual conference with a whole bunch of different people, and I was giving the opening keynote. And it was it was about how to open virtual meetings and how to do it, because I have a bunch of different openings that I use and that I've trained other speakers how to use to earn attention right away, because it's a lot easier to capture attention right at the beginning than it is to try and get it back 15 minutes in. And this day-long virtual keynote or virtual conference, it was being hosted by these people in Perth, Australia, which is 4 hours behind me in New Zealand. And so it was 6 a.m. local time for the event organizers. But it went all day. And there were people in New Zealand who were attending. There were people in Sydney and Melbourne who were attending. And there were a few people in North America, but it was mostly APAC centric. And I thought, hey, I'm coming in as the opener, and I'm going to be demonstrating how to do great openings for the opening of this conference. I thought this is going to be a great place, not only for me to share what I know, but also to network and meet a lot of other people. But there was a technical glitch right at the top of the conference, and people didn't get the link to my session. And even though there was 200, I had about 6 in the room. And so I was really disheartened during my performance. And then afterwards, I was so frustrated with the technical glitch, which was not my fault. It was something that had happened in the production where in there, they gave this PDF program to everybody. Here's the links to everything you need throughout the day. And my link was incorrect, the first one of the day. And I was so frustrated that after my performance, I shut my computer and I went outside and touched grass, and I just spent the rest of the day outside. And I didn't do any networking with anybody there. Those 6 people who were there, I found out later, raved about my event to everybody else. And I could have been networking with other people. This was a workshop for facilitators. And so it was people that could have been referring me business or could have been collaborating with me in some way. But because I was upset, I let that anger keep me from having what could have been a fantastic prospecting opportunity. And I lost who knows how much business by being grumpy. That's probably my most embarrassing story.
Well, that's a great story, honestly. So when you are putting together a core keynote speech, how long of a base segment or whatever you want to call it do you shoot for? 30 minutes, 45, 60? Because obviously you need to have some modularity, flexibility. Events change. I mean, they're running behind. They need you to go shorter. They're running ahead. They want you to go longer, whatever. So what's your core component of a keynote speech in terms of length of time?
My core component is I aim for 45 minutes.
Okay.
And then I can expand it to 90 with exercises. But I think what you're getting at is the modularity of the content. And I learned a method of developing IP from an organization called Thought Leaders Business School. And they're based out of Australia. And it was founded by Matt Church, who's one of the world's top 10 motivational speakers. And he teaches this concept called pink sheets. He likes to say that pink sheets are the most important thing he knows. And this dude knows a lot. So it's really saying something. And a pink sheet, he calls full spectrum thinking of an idea. And so you take an idea and you say, okay, I need to have a concept, the context, and the content. I need to have left brain and right brain. It's just a worksheet. You fill out this worksheet with a model and a metaphor and studies and a statement and an explanation. There's all these pieces you fill out. But then this pink sheet, it can become 15 minutes of a keynote or a chapter of a book or an hour of a workshop. It becomes this modular piece of IP that you can deliver in multiple different delivery modes. And when I wrote my book, Marketing Yourself, each one of these chapters was a pink sheet. It's one idea that's fully fleshed out so that I can take this pink sheet and say, okay, I want to talk about your personal statement. And I have a metaphor for this and a visual model and case studies and statistics and stories. And I have all this stuff on your personal statement. And then I just wrote a chapter about it. And I can talk about your personal statement for 10 or 15 minutes in a keynote and then go to another pink sheet and then go to another pink sheet. And then I'm kind of done. And each one of the pink sheets that I have, I've also developed exercises that people can do with it. So if I need to expand a 3 pink sheet keynote into a 90-minute interactive workshop, all I do is I look on the back of each pink sheet for all of the questions and exercises that I've put there that are related. And so it helps me do that thinking in advance so that when it's time for me to deliver, I don't have to build everything from scratch. I've already done that heavy lifting and I can just deliver an exceptional experience.
So when you're preparing for a keynote, Caelan, and you're going, let's say you're going into an association or whatever, how much customization do you do on a given keynote for a particular audience?
It depends. If they want a topic that's something I've taught before and it's a core piece of my IP, it's very easy for me to do. And I generally aim for a 1-to-1 prep to performance time ratio. If it's a 45-minute keynote, I'd like to have 45 minutes of prep and be ready to go. If it's custom, if there's new topics that I don't already have pink sheets for, or something that I haven't presented on in the past and I have to make new slides, I aim for a 2-to-1 ratio. So if I'm doing a day-long workshop, then I'm going to plan 2 days of prep time in order for 45-minute presentation, and there's new things, then I aim for 90 minutes of prep time. The more custom it is, the more I go outside of those guidelines, but that's what I aim for.
All right. Now, when we were talking, Caelan, before the show, you mentioned your book, which I would highly recommend everybody get a hold of. But you graciously have offered people can get a free chapter of your book. So, would you please tell us how they can do that?
Sure. If you go to marketingyourselfbook.com/free chapter, then you can subscribe to my newsletter list, and I'll send you the first chapter, which is about your personal statement. And I provide a formula that you can use to share who you are, what you do, and why you're amazing.
Well, we will make sure that appears in the show notes down below, certainly. So, as we wind down this episode, Caelan, what final words of wisdom might you have for the up-and-coming aspiring speaker as to how to be most successful as a professional speaker?
I'd say to lean into your imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome. If you're willing to fake it until you make it,
All right,
if
Caelan,
you're willing to
back
reach.
you up just a second because you cut out briefly there on this. You were talking about imposter syndrome, so if you could just rewind to that, that'd be great.
Sure. Imposter syndrome is only earned by the fakers. If you're willing to fake it until you make it, then you're going to reach beyond your grasp. I have good news for you. Real imposters do not feel imposter syndrome. So if you're feeling like, oh, I don't know if I deserve to be up here, that's a good sign. It means that you struggle with something so much that you've learned to a deeper level than people who are actual imposters. I love that saying that, the master is simply someone who has failed 10,000 times. If you're failing a lot, it makes you feel like, oh, I'm an imposter, I suck at this. But it's through that difficulty that we actually earn our expertise.
That's such great advice. So, aside from getting the free chapter of your book, how else can people get involved in your world if they so choose?
Well, following me on LinkedIn is a great way to do it. My name's kind of difficult to spell, so it's a little bit of a puzzle. If you go to CaelanHuntress.com, a lot of my writing and my thoughts and my blogging about my adventures are there. But, I always like to connect with new people on LinkedIn and stay in contact with people there.
All right, awesome. Well, Caelan, I want to thank you so much for being my guest on this episode of the Spotlight on Speaking show. I wish you the greatest of success in all that you do. Enjoy being a Kiwi there, certainly. And to all the listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, may this year be your greatest year yet. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
This has been the Spotlight on Speaking show with Brett Ridgway. Be sure to join us every week as we interview speaking industry pros and have them share their best tips for building a profitable speaking business. Until next week, thank you for tuning in, and remember to visit our website at spotlightonspeaking.com so you can enjoy even more great episodes like this one. While you're here, be sure to subscribe via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Spotlight on Speaking show. Until then, our sincere best wishes to you for the greatest of success as you work to build your own profitable speaking business.